Alright, what's going on, y'all? We're here, and of course, as you see with the thumbnail, it's kind of be an interesting one to say the very least. I know, very interesting choice of a thumbnail. I'll just leave it to when we get to that point. Obviously, we want to start with WWE AEW right now. I guess, want to do a state of address as far as the overall landscape is concerned right now. I gotta say I'm enjoying things more or less at this point in time as far as the product is concerned, and this is just following solely these two companies right now. Unfortunately, I don't have any sort of TV access to TNA. I don't really spend a lot of time watching Ring of Honor, although I have been hearing good things recently. And then, of course, New Japan is a little bit tricky. It always has been for me, no matter what. And in a strange way, it also falls into the same category as TNA, in the sense that really the only real access I've truly had to New Japan has been Access TV, and as far as I know, that's still to be the case. Access TV isn't a part of the Hulu package, so unfortunately that's not there. I'm not seeing a whole lot of that, but at least as far as TNA is concerned, I'm still hearing good enough things at the very least when it comes to their product, despite the departure of Scott D'Amore, and that's definitely a pleasing thing to know, especially having gone back to the original branding of TNA Wrestling, which honestly I was happy as hell about that. It was just really, really disappointing that they let go of Scott D'Amore, but it seems now at this point, and it's actually been obvious since then, the figurehead has been Tommy Dreamer, which I actually do approve of that. He's got a great mind for the business. Will he still have the same impact, no pun intended, as a Scott D'Amore did for as long as Scott D'Amore did? I would like to think so, but we'll see what winds up happening with that. But I only bring that up because, again, I just love the landscape, but at the same time, between AEW and WWE specifically, I guess maybe I'm at a point to where I need to find a way to getting access to those products, because there are times where, I just feel like, again, I enjoy both sides, but it's just tricky because I question whether or not either side is living up to the potential. And the thing is, not every episode is always going to be a banger episode. That's just not going to happen, especially in today's pro wrestling. Whether you want to blame Vince McMahon for that or whatever the case may be or not, just the landscape when he was at the helm, was a little bit different, and it was just, you would be more likely to find the needle in the haystack than you would the banger episode under the Vince regime. Those were almost few and far between compared to now. And it's funny because that was when AEW was really, really doing its thing. They're getting back to that now, but it hasn't quite hit the same since. But I don't know. We'll find out about that. That's just me airing out my whole thing about that. But we're going to jump into a couple of other things here. One is going to be a really, really interesting one, as you'll see right here. And you're going to be wondering why I'm talking about this in particular. It's going to be for a reason that a lot of people aren't really thinking a lot about. Specifically the fact that if Well, I'll just cut right to the chase. If you were watching any part of the WNBA broadcast on ESPN last night, like I was, you actually caught a little bit of a surprise spot that came along. I want to say it was somewhere along the second half when I saw it. It may have aired a couple different times. I didn't really see the game from the beginning, but it was just interesting because just to name really the handful of them that I can name off the top of my head, it was Candace Parker, Kelsey Plum, and Cameron Brink. Now, these are all three very well known names in the WNBA. Especially Candace Parker having just retired. Really interesting to see her a part of this. But the other two I want to talk about, of course, Kelsey Plum of the back-to-back reigning defending champion in the Las Vegas Aces, and the top three. I think she was the number 2 overall pick, number 2 or number 3, either way, to the Los Angeles Sparks and Cameron Brink. And of course, they're all, needless to say, they're all in their underwear. And it was obvious it was Skims because, ever since Kim Kardashian came through with the Skims product as the, I guess, original face of their brand, their product has become pretty unmistakable. I'm not going to talk about whether or not I think they're having Victoria's Secrets on the rope or anything like that. It's just funny because you don't hear as much about Victoria's Secret now with them around. But I mentioned Cameron Brink specifically because she was a really big name as far as the NIL market was concerned for the women. And I say that largely because she actually turned pro because she didn't want to go into, the travel that goes with being on the Stanford team now that they're in the ACC along with California, the University of Cal. She didn't want to do the travel in that. But I want to bring that up specifically because NIL. And what's been attached to NIL just as much as anything with college sports? WWE. Now, who's to say that at some point we're not going to see a Skims campaign with a lot of WWE female stars? I mean, I just feel like somewhere along the way this is coming at some point. I mean, just because we got it last night, and it was a little bit of a surprise. I hadn't seen it before. I had only seen it that once when I had caught it. I didn't really pay much attention after that. But it was just something that hit me, and I couldn't help but want to bring it up. And I'd like to think maybe at some point during an episode of NXT, we may catch a random spot of it. Don't be too surprised if we do, is just all I'm saying. And I'm going to just leave it at that as we get into the more dicier stuff. And I'm going to try to move through this as I took up more time with that than I wanted to. But I want to talk a little bit about Hook and Taz. Specifically, for one thing, their tie-in with the main subject of this video here with their storyline involving Chris Jericho and the FTW Championship right now on AEW. It's really interesting for a variety of reasons, but one thing about this, and this is just me speaking honestly because this is a mindset that I had at one point in time, because I've had this conversation, especially with my best friend Darren. Shout out to him, hope things are going well. He's dealing with some health stuff recently, so, a lot of prayers and best wishes to him on that, first and foremost. And I gotta really kind of put that out there because he may not be too happy with a lot of what I'm about to say, but just hear me out on this. There was a point where I was actually of the mindset that, a lot of talk was going around, that Hook would be considering NXT, haven't mentioned NXT, so I guess there was a low-key segue in all of that. But I say all of that because I think that there's a pretty universal opinion at this point that Hook would really do some amazing things if he ever went to NXT. And I'm going to be the first one to say this, especially given with the context of where this storyline has gone. I got to agree. Especially because, it makes me question whether or not is this really the best we could do for Hook. Now, the flip side to it is at least he's not the feature piece of the 0 hour, at least that's not a thing anymore. But all that aside, I just can't help but think, is he really being utilized to the best of his ability? I mean, he had a fantastic match, even though he was largely being destroyed by Samoa Joe when he was still the world champion, at the peak of Samoa Joe's world title reign. But having gone from that to this is just something that, at first, I wasn't really that big of a fan of. And the fact that apparently Taz's contract is going to be up sometime in the near future doesn't help matters much either. But at the same time, those are things to be considered, and that just brings me to the main part of this video. Of course, the Ocho himself, well, I guess if you want to consider the FTW Championship an actual world title, I guess he's the 9 or the 9, but I don't know. I'm not even going to try to go there with that. Point is, I think, and the title speaks for itself, we've been hearing it a lot for some time now. Please retire. Please retire. I mean, it's just something that whenever you turn on the TV this man is on, you're going to hear this at some point. Now, a lot of people are going to have their feelings about this man the way that they do. That's just the reality of this, And I'm not going to say that those feelings aren't justified. And the reason that I feel this way, and even now, given the fact that there are reasons for me to feel like I've come around on this a little bit, it's just difficult. But at the same time, where this could work is it may come down to you have this man lose a retirement match. And I say that given the fact that if you end up having a situation where both Hook and Taz end up leaving, that works well as a great insurance policy, because let's be real about one other thing. Regardless of how you may feel about him, whether it's on any capacity to being on AEW programming or not, he's a hell of a commentator. He adds to the commentary team. And I'm thinking just in the scenario that if Hook and Taz collectively decide to depart from AEW, I don't know when that's going to be, but if that should ever be the case, this is something to be considered. Now, I don't know necessarily that he'd lose a retirement match to Hook per se, but somewhere along the way, you may want to look at the idea, and if for no other reason, it may just be for the better of the product as a whole. Just because of all the stars that you could be given TV time to, that, may actually be more conducive to getting the product going the direction that you need it to be going at some point or another. And really, I just don't know any other way of looking at it, but it kind of feels like it's the direction that we're going. And I may be wrong about that, but if I'm Tony Khan, I'm taking it strongly into consideration. I'm just going to leave it at that. Say what you will about it, but it is what it is. Y'all know what it is. Like, share, subscribe. I appreciate y'all for fucking with me. And I'm gonna get at y'all.